So when people are focusing on creating AI to create funny images, why you think that AI for drug discovery will work? Okay, and you were working great at Google, right? How this career pivot into biotech and this life sciences happened?
I think at some point in my life, I realized that I wanted to do something more meaningful. I wanted to do something that would really make an impact in the world and in the lives of people. I honestly believe that helping biotechs or contributing to drug discovery is the single most important thing that I can do.
As you are a early stage drug discovery startup, like what you see, what are these some practical applications which can be implemented while drug discovery?
A group of machines can probably do a better job at it with higher accuracy than a human or a group of humans. A lot of the work that is involved here is setting up simulations, running those simulations, and then analyzing the results of those simulations. So humans typically would go and use different tools, different programs, tweak different parameters, run these things, wait for them to finish, and then when they're done, they go and look at it and kind of iterate, design new experiments and run them until they are happy with the results. Much of the work that is done by computational chemists can already be automated by an AI agent. In general, there is more innovation coming from smaller organizations.
Hello everyone, welcome in the another episode of 21 Minute Pharma Edge powered by Game of Pharma. And today we have with us a very special guest, Javier. Javier is a technology executive, investor, and entrepreneur. He is currently leading Polling AI, a next generation molecular simulation platform. Also, he worked with Google 16 years and led some of the great projects like search, ads, supply chain, and the cloud. Recently, he has been focusing on the healthcare, pharma, and the biotech and helping organization use cloud, machine learning, and generative AI to improve drug discovery and the patient care. Also, he worked at Microsoft previously and also interned at McKinsey. So, welcome on the show, Javier.
Thank you so much, Lokesh. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's our pleasure to host you on our show. And I just want to start this conversation in a funny way, okay? So, when people are focusing on creating AI to create funny images, why you think that AI for drug discovery will work? Okay, and you were working great at Google, right? How did this career pivot into biotech and this life sciences happen?
I don't know if it's a funny question. I think it's a very deep and profound question, but I would say, so many of us are distracted with things that don't really matter that much, right? Creating memes, arguing online, like consuming, content that does not really fulfill us. I think at some point in my life, I realized that I wanted to do something more meaningful. I wanted to do something that would really make an impact in the world and the lives of people around me. And I honestly believe that helping biotechs or contributing to drug discovery is the single most important thing that I can do, right? There are, of course, lots of things that, we could do with our time, engineers, entrepreneurs, and so on, right? Like, there's tons and tons of businesses, there are, many ways to use our abilities, right? Especially in tech. But, at the end of the day, we are all patients, right? Like, at the end of the day, we all suffer from health issues, ourselves and our family. If I can make a meaningful difference there, if I can help, one, customer, find one drug, right? That would be worth so much more than, just making more money, right? Or being, like doing some popular, piece of open source software, right? Or whatever, right? So for me, it was mostly about finding a meaningful thing where I could contribute.
No, agree. I think, as you mentioned, right, that it takes time to build a drug, right, and some of the processes are too manual previously,
Mhm.
right, which can be automated with the help of AI, right? But still, like when people interviewed also some of the top level of pharmaceutical stakeholders, right? Still, most of them are unaware about the practical applications of AI uh, in the drug discovery, right? Like some nuances are not clear there. So I just want to know from you, as you are a early stage drug discovery startup, like what you see, what are the some practical applications which can be implemented while drug discovery?
Yeah, there's so many. The way that I think about it is I try to match what a system would do with what a real human person is doing. So, for example, one area that is important is processing clinical trial documentation. Many times people will go and like manually check documents and copy and paste data from one place to another, right? And there are people whose job is to do that, right? Um, we have probably reached already a level of sophistication in the technology that those jobs can be entirely replaced with a machine. And machines are not perfect, right? But the point is that a group of machines can probably do a better job at it with higher accuracy than a human or a group of humans, by any way that you measure it. Um, you know, in my case, I'm especially interested in the very early stage drug discovery. A lot of the work that is involved here is setting up simulations, running those simulations, and then analyzing the results of those simulations. So humans typically would go and use different tools, different programs, tweak different parameters, run these things, wait for them to finish, and then when they are done, they go and look at it and kind of iterate, design new experiments, and run them until they are happy with the results. A lot of that work is not as sophisticated, right? A lot of that involves basically, downloading files, moving files around, editing things, changing parameters, logging into different systems and so on. So I think much of that work can be entirely automated. And then that frees up space for a human expert to, operate at a higher level, right? To think, what are the kinds of simulations that will be most useful here, right? And then, doing a final analysis of the results. So in that sense, much of the work that is done by a computational chemist can already be automated by an AI agent, powered by a language model, right? So those are just, two examples. But if you think about all the many different stages, from literature review to in silico to processing data from animal experiments to clinical trials and so on and so forth, I think there are plenty of opportunities to automate many of those processes. I think there are areas where it's not immediate, right? And it's going to be much harder. The example that I always, tell people is you can't use AI to make biology faster, right? So if you need to do an experiment on mice and then you need to give them some drug and see if the disease disappears, and then that disease takes a month to disappear, or to notice an effect. Well, it's going to take a month to run that experiment. You can be as smart as you want, right? But the biology is not going to be any faster, right? So some things are still going to take quite a bit of time, but I think everything else that involves processing information, right, can be made more effective.
Agree. I think the processing information were a important part when people were doing this drug discovery phase, right, previously. And then with the help of AI, I think it can be automated. And when things get automated, I think people get enough time to do certain necessary steps that can be the clinical trial, human clinical trial, and they can get enough space, right, to do so. And there, I think they can create more impact. And I think same like executives comes. So I comes from the pharma background, right? The podcast name is Game of Pharma. So people came and like senior stakeholders of every large pharma companies are mentioning in their every interview, TED talk, right? Like what will be the next game changer in the life sciences industry, and everyone say AI. And when like people literally ask them that do you have something as a real use case, and then they feel a bit like I don't know, or something like, yeah, we are implementing like the process can automated with the chat GPT and like basic stuff, right? What I have understood. But when like I saw this trend, like you can just correct me, that when things comes to the biotech startups, right? They are much more aware of like how they can implement those things into more scientific way, right? In the scientific processes. So, do you also think in the same way that are biotech startups more open to adapt AI compared to the large pharmaceutical company? If it yes, why it's yes? If not, why not?
Yeah, I think in general, smaller companies have an easier time changing, right? Any company that has, decades or hundreds of years, that has thousands and thousands of people, is going to find it hard to move fast, right? Because companies, organizations have inertia, right? There are people that have been doing, the same job the same way for many, many years. So it's always very hard to take an organization like that and tell people, hey, now we're going to do things completely different. Now you have to learn a new skill set. You have to learn all these new things. You have to change the way that you do everything, right? So that conversation is very hard. And honestly, I think, very few executives around the world have been able to do that. So, biotechs don't have those problems, right? If you have a small company that is just being formed with like, two or three people, and then, you're hiring teams from scratch, you can always move much faster. You can begin, setting up your company, setting up your processes that already use this technology to do the things that humans were doing before, for example. Just by virtue of being smaller and starting from scratch, you can move much faster in principle. Now, of course, the smaller biotechs don't have the same level of resources, right? So that is a problem. But I think in general, there is more innovation coming from smaller organizations than really big ones. Or at least in the drug discovery space. I think what we see very often is that those biotechs end up being bought by larger pharma companies, right? And that's how they acquire like molecules or processes or whatever. If I remember right, I think two-thirds or three-quarters of molecules in the US now come from biotech instead of larger pharma, right? So, I think if I could say one thing, right, to pharma execs is, um, it's always good when you have money and you can buy these companies, right? But promoting partnerships or innovation, is probably cheaper and likely to lead to better results, right? And then hopefully we'll reach a point where one or a few of these companies would adopt this, radically innovate, and then everybody else would be forced to follow the same path.
So, like it's all the conversation that we did is around AI for the drug discovery, right? I just want to know like how this polling AI idea comes into your mind, right? Now it's a perfect time to ask, and it was just
Yeah.
a table conversation, like Google. You were just sitting at the Google cafe, and this strike into your mind, and how this idea came up, and then how you differentiate this polling AI, right? Your
Hmm.
baby from the traditional molecular simulation platforms.
Yeah. So I've been thinking about these ideas for many years. And at some point, about a year and a half ago, I realized that language models were getting much, much better. And the trend was very clear. They will continue getting better. And they were good enough to start automating work, right? I think that was the thing that clicked. We saw how, in the coding world, for example, right? The software engineering world, they could write a little bit of code. They could run tools, iterate and so on and so forth, right? So it was not just a tool, a toy, right? It was a useful tool, and I thought, okay, maybe the same thing can be done in other areas in drug discovery, right? So for me, it started with the idea of using language models as a way to automate tasks. And I think, for a variety of reasons we don't have to get into, I think some of the things are easier to do in a startup that is part of a large company. So that's why I decided to leave and found polling. I found other people that were interested in the same thing, and then, we kind of have been working together for about a year. We've been building a lot of stuff. Now we're, finally getting ready to launch our product, right? So we're actually very, very excited about that. The way that we think about it, or the main difference between what we're doing and what other people are doing, is that a lot of other folks are building models for individual steps, or they're building tools for individual steps, right? So if you think about something like AlphaFold, it is, of course, a massive achievement, a Nobel Prize, winning achievement, but it still does only one part that is required in drug discovery, which is getting your structure of the target, protein that you want to target. Um, what we are doing is we're trying to build end-to-end automation for a lot of the tasks that are involved in this early stage drug discovery. So we have built a tool that does docking in a fully automated way. We are almost done with a molecular dynamics simulation platform, and we got started with a little bit of the literature research for target identification. And our goal is to create a platform that does the entire process in a fully automated way. I think that's what distinguishes us from a lot of other folks.
Agree. And then the scientific advisory helps a lot, right? And when you launch your product and some of the pilots will go right with these small companies or mid-sized companies. I think there you will be able to find more clear view like what people require, right? And I think every company is starting with this only in the AI space right now nowadays, right? They are doing pilot projects with the companies, and then they are finding out their own piece of cake, right? That this is something that this piece of cake required by every organization, like every other organization. So I think it's a good approach to go to create this podcast more fun. Javier, like I just want to ask you some of the rapid fire questions. Okay, you need
Sure.
to answer them in a word or phrase. Okay,
All
so
right.
what excites you most, code or molecule nowadays?
Code still.
Cool. I think that tech blood always be at the forefront. Okay, so who is your favorite scientist or innovator?
Um, well, I don't know who's my favorite, but I will stick with Linus Pauling. That's the person after whom the company is named.
Right. Uh, uh, if you had to explain that molecular simulation to like someone who is 5 years old, right, in one sentence, what would you say?
Say, um, we are we're trying to recreate molecules inside of a computer so we can predict how they work in real life, right? So we can cure diseases.
Great. Uh, if not polling AI, what would you be building today? What was your second priority?
I'm actually super interested in longevity medicine and longevity therapeutics. So I would probably be working on, there's a whole bunch of new ideas about how to extend lifespan. So I'll probably pick one of those.
But stick to healthcare, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm fortunate that I have a lot of different options for things to work on, and I still think that curing diseases is super super important, and there should be more people working on it.
Right. I think longevity is also a thing where most of the new age companies are working on, right? And I think it's also something that is not something that in a single day it will create the impact, but with the time being, right, it will create a more and more impact in the people's life, right? So finally, to end our conversation, right, I just want to ask you, like, what excites you most about the next 5 years in the AI and the pharma?
Um, I think we will probably see the first AI designed drugs be approved. And then there will probably be a flurry of activity. More money will come in, more companies will pop up, and then hopefully we will all benefit.
So thank you so much for being on this show. I think it was great learning from this podcast that how you are changing the things. I think, and I think more people will join you in the future, right? Who are from the pharma and will help you to build this kind of initiative, which will help all of this ecosystem in the future.
That's the hope. Thank you so much, Lokesh. It was my pleasure.